Survival has been the central thread of human existence since the dawn of time. Our human ancestors had to adapt to harsh environments, evade predators, hunt for food, and navigate complex social dynamics to ensure their survival and that of their offspring, as did the organisms that came before our species. Over time, this instinct for survival has evolved beyond physical endurance to include psychological, emotional, and social mechanisms. Today, while we may not face the same threats as our prehistoric predecessors, the unconscious drive for survival still governs much of human behavior. Understanding these mechanisms within ourselves allows us to see them in others, fostering compassion and insight into why people behave as they do. By taking the time to study our deeply ingrained survival instincts, we can begin to break free from limiting patterns and create a future of greater understanding and cooperation among all people. The evolutionary mechanisms of survival. Survival has always been tied to adaptability. From the earliest humans navigating the African savannas to modern societies contending with economic and technological shifts, adaptation has been essential. Some of the key ways humans have evolved to survive include physical adaptations. Bipedalism allowed early humans to cover long distances, hunt efficiently, and see over tall grass to spot potential threats. Opposable thumbs enabled tool use, which in turn made hunting, gathering, and crafting more efficient. Increased brain size led to the development of complex reasoning, problem-solving skills, and memory retention, all of which gave humans a survival edge over other species. Psychological adaptations. The fight or flight response is an automatic reaction that has been crucial for survival. Our brains are wired to detect threats quickly and react in ways that enhance our chances of staying alive. Pattern recognition, which helps us predict dangers based on past experiences, is another critical adaptation. Emotional bonding, particularly between parents and children, ensures that the young receive care and protection until they are capable of surviving on their own. Social adaptations. The ability to form and maintain relationships played a significant role in human survival. Early humans developed language to communicate with one another, share knowledge, and coordinate activities like hunting and defense. Collective hunting and cooperation allowed groups to take down larger prey and secure more food. The formation of societal hierarchies helped maintain order and cooperation, ensuring that resources were shared and roles were assigned to maximize survival. Cultural adaptations. The transmission of knowledge through stories, rituals, and traditions allowed each generation to build upon the wisdom of the past, teaching survival skills, passing down hunting techniques, and learning from past mistakes enabled societies to advance and become more resilient. Cultural norms and ethics evolved to promote group cohesion and prevent behaviors that might threaten the well-being of the community. The unconscious behaviors of daily survival. Many of our daily habits and behaviors stem from survival instincts that have been deeply ingrained over thousands of years. These include hyper-awareness of social dynamics to maintain status and avoid exclusion, which in early human history could mean death. Humans naturally scan social environments to gauge where they stand within a group. Fear of social rejection often drives people to conform to societal expectations, seeking comfort and stability to conserve energy and minimize risk. People gravitate toward routines and familiar environments because unpredictability can be perceived as a potential threat to well-being. Developing mental shortcuts, heuristics, to make quick decisions in uncertain situations. Our brains are constantly filtering information and making rapid judgments to ensure we stay safe and make effective choices. Avoidance of conflict or confrontation, unless necessary for self-preservation. While some individuals may thrive in aggressive environments, most people instinctively steer clear of situations that could result in harm or social exclusion. Attachment to groups and beliefs as a way to ensure inclusion and support. Religious, political, and cultural affiliations often provide a sense of security and purpose, reinforcing survival instincts by fostering unity and mutual assistance. The role of ego in human survival. The ego is often seen as the part of our psyche that maintains our sense of self, identity, and self-importance. In terms of survival, the ego plays both a protective and limiting role. It serves as a psychological mechanism to keep us safe by regulating how we navigate the social world, but it can also create illusions and defenses that hinder our personal growth and relationships. Understanding the role of ego in survival can help us recognize our own unconscious behaviors and offer deeper insights into why people act the way they do. The evolutionary purpose of ego in survival. The ego evolved as a psychological adaptation to protect our sense of self and ensure social belonging. In ancient times, being part of a group meant a higher chance of survival. The ego helped individuals establish their roles, defend their status, and avoid being cast out of the tribe. Today, this survival function persists in many ways. Self-protection. The ego creates defensive mechanisms, such as denial, rationalization, or projection, to protect us from perceived threats to our identity, self-worth, or security. Social positioning. It helps us navigate social hierarchies by seeking validation, recognition, and influence within our communities. Threat detection. The ego is hypersensitive to criticism or rejection because, historically, social exclusion was a direct threat to survival. Identity formation. It provides a sense of consistency and identity, making us feel secure in knowing who we are in relation to others. However, while these mechanisms were crucial for survival in early human history, they can create unnecessary conflicts and suffering in modern life. How ego creates illusions of survival. While the ego helps protect our self-image and position in society, it often generates illusions that keep us stuck in survival-based thinking. Some examples include fear of change. The ego resists change because it perceives the unknown as a threat. This is why people stay in toxic relationships, unfulfilling jobs, or self-destructive habits. They fear the discomfort of uncertainty. Desire for control. The ego craves control as a way to reduce fear and maintain a sense of stability, even when that control is an illusion. Defensive reactions. When someone challenges our beliefs, the ego reacts as if our survival is at stake, leading to defensiveness, arguments, or avoidance. Social comparison. The ego constantly evaluates where we stand compared to others. This can lead to feelings of superiority, boosting self-worth, or inferiority, creating insecurity and resentment. Attachment to identity. People cling to labels, roles, and belief systems as part of their survival mechanism. If an identity is threatened, the ego reacts with fear, anger, or resistance. These illusions shape much of human behavior, often causing unnecessary suffering and limiting our ability to evolve beyond survival-based thinking. Ego and conflict. Why people fight to survive. Conflicts, both personal and global, often arise from ego-driven survival instincts. Whether in personal relationships, politics, or war, the ego plays a key role in fueling division and competition. Here's how. Personal conflicts. Arguments between partners, friends, or family often stem from ego-driven needs for validation, control, or superiority. Social and cultural conflicts, racial, religious, and political divisions are often rooted in ego-based group identities that create an us versus them mentality. War and power struggles. Leaders and nations engage in war to protect their survival, whether through resources, control, or ideological dominance. Revenge and retribution. The ego seeks to restore a perceived loss of dignity or power, leading to cycles of violence and retaliation. Understanding the ego's role in conflict can help us break free from reactive behaviors and develop more conscious, compassionate ways of engaging with others. Recognizing ego in ourselves and others. To move beyond survival-based thinking, we must first recognize how our ego operates in daily life. Some questions to reflect on include, when do I feel the need to defend myself, even when not physically threatened? How often do I react emotionally to criticism, rather than seeing it as an opportunity to learn? Am I attached to a specific identity or belief that limits my ability to evolve? Do I seek approval or validation to feel worthy rather than cultivating self-acceptance? In what ways do I judge others based on my own fears and insecurities? By becoming aware of these patterns, we can begin to observe how the ego operates in others as well. This allows us to cultivate empathy and see people's negative behaviors as unconscious survival mechanisms rather than personal attacks. Transcending ego for conscious evolution. Breaking free from the ego's survival grip allows us to live with greater peace, wisdom, and authenticity. Some ways to move beyond ego-driven survival instincts include practicing self-awareness. Observing our thoughts, reactions, and motivations without judgment helps us detach from the ego's control. Cultivating compassion. When we understand that others are acting from unconscious survival instincts, we can respond with empathy rather than judgment. Letting go of control. Accepting uncertainty as a natural part of life reduces fear-based decision-making. Releasing attachment to identity. Recognizing that we are more than our roles, beliefs, or status helps us live with greater freedom. Embracing humility. The ego thrives on self-importance. Practicing humility allows us to stay open to growth and new perspectives. By integrating these practices into our daily lives, we move from mere survival toward true self-awareness and connection with others. Moving beyond ego-based survival. The ego has played a crucial role in human survival, but in modern society, it often creates more suffering than protection. By recognizing how ego-driven behaviors shape our lives, we can begin to transcend them, fostering deeper understanding and unity among people. True survival is not about competition, fear, or control. It is about growth, connection, and evolving beyond our primitive instincts into higher states of consciousness. Understanding the ego's role in survival is not just about self-improvement. It is about shaping a future where humans interact with greater awareness, compassion, and wisdom. Quantum physics versus primal human survival. Quantum physics and human survival psychology may seem like separate domains, but when viewed through an integral epistemic and evolutionary lens, they reveal deep interconnections. Quantum principles, such as uncertainty, entanglement, and superposition, can serve as metaphors and even potential explanations for aspects of human behavior, cognition, and social interaction. By applying quantum insights to human survival psychology, we gain a more fluid, interconnected, and dynamic perspective on how we think, react, and evolve. Uncertainty. Principle: fear of the unknown in human survival. In quantum mechanics, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle states that we cannot simultaneously know both the position and momentum of a particle with absolute precision. The very act of observing influences the outcome. How this relates to human survival psychology. Humans have an innate fear of uncertainty because, in ancestral times, the unknown often meant danger. This is why our ego craves control, prediction, and fixed narratives. Like quantum particles, our psychological states are in flux. Our emotions, thoughts, and identities shift depending on context, perception, and external influences. The more we try to pin down a fixed identity or belief system, the less adaptable we become, which can be detrimental to survival in a rapidly changing world. Accepting uncertainty, rather than resisting it, allows for psychological flexibility and growth. Key insight. Just as quantum systems exist in probabilistic states, human minds thrive when embracing uncertainty and adaptability, rather than rigid survival-based thinking. Quantum entanglement. The interconnected nature of human survival. Entanglement is the phenomenon where two particles become linked, regardless of distance. What affects one instantaneously affects the other. How this relates to human psychology. Human relationships and survival are deeply interconnected. We are biologically wired for connection, as social bonds historically increased survival chances. Trauma. Generational patterns and collective consciousness function similarly to entanglement. What happens to one person, group, or society affects the whole. Mirror neurons in our brains allow us to feel and respond to others' emotions, akin to entangled particles sharing information. Global crises, climate, war, economic collapse, demonstrate how deeply interconnected human survival is, much like entangled particles influencing each other across space. Key insight. The illusion of separateness is an ego-driven survival mechanism, but quantum physics suggests we are fundamentally interwoven. Recognizing this shifts us from competition-based survival to collaboration-based evolution. Superposition, the potential for multiple psychological states. In quantum mechanics, a particle can exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed superposition. This suggests that reality is not fixed until interaction collapses it into a particular state. How this relates to human survival psychology. We often exist in multiple psychological states, both fearful and courageous, both doubtful and confident, until a situation collapses our response into a single outcome. Identity is not fixed. Just as a quantum particle is in superposition, human potential exists in multiple possibilities. The ego seeks to fix us into one role for survival, e.g., the strong one, the victim, the leader. But true growth comes from embracing our fluid nature. By expanding awareness, we can consciously choose which psychological state to collapse into reality, whether a fear-based or growth-oriented response. Key insight. We are not just one thing, we contain multitudes. Recognizing our fluid nature allows us to move beyond survival instincts into self-directed evolution. Observer effect. Consciousness shapes reality. The observer effect in quantum physics states that the mere act of observing a system changes its outcome. How this relates to human survival psychology. How we perceive reality directly impacts our survival strategies. Fear-based perspectives create defensive, scarcity-driven behaviors. Expansive awareness fosters adaptability and creativity. Self-awareness shifts behavior. By observing our own thought patterns, we influence how we act, respond, and evolve. Societal narratives shape collective psychology. If we collectively focus on threats, survival anxiety increases. If we shift focus to possibilities, we co-create a new reality. Key insight. Reality is not just happening to us. We are actively shaping it through perception, attention, and conscious awareness. Quantum tunneling, breaking through psychological barriers. Quantum tunneling is the phenomenon where particles pass through energy barriers that should, by classical physics, be impossible to cross. How this relates to human survival psychology. Trauma, fear, and limiting beliefs act as psychological barriers, keeping us in survival loops. Like particles tunneling through barriers, human consciousness can break through perceived limits when given the right conditions, self-awareness, support, expanded perspectives. Many people believe they are stuck due to past programming, but quantum insights suggest transformation is always possible. Key insight. The mind, like quantum particles, can transcend barriers once thought impenetrable. Growth and healing are always within reach. A quantum perspective on human survival psychology. Looking at human survival psychology through the lens of quantum physics shifts us from a rigid, deterministic view to one of fluidity, interconnectedness, and infinite potential. Instead of seeing survival as a competition or a fixed struggle, we begin to recognize that uncertainty is not a threat. It is a space of possibility. We are entangled with others, meaning collective healing and evolution are possible. Identity and behavior are in superposition. We are never just one thing. Our observation and awareness shape reality. Barriers can be transcended through shifts in perception. This perspective moves us beyond survival instincts and into a more expansive, adaptive, and interconnected way of being, one that aligns with both ancient wisdom and the cutting-edge insights of quantum physics. Recognizing survival instincts in ourselves. To see survival instincts in others, we must first recognize them within ourselves. This requires deep self-reflection and honesty about our motivations. Some key questions to ask ourselves include: do I react defensively when I feel my status is threatened? Do I avoid risks because of an underlying fear of loss? How often do I make choices based on comfort rather than long-term growth? In what ways do I seek validation from others to ensure my place in society? By identifying these tendencies, we can begin to observe how similar mechanisms operate in others. Recognizing survival instincts in others. Once we see these patterns in ourselves, we can observe them in those around us. A few examples. A person being aggressive may actually be protecting themselves from perceived rejection or self-lacking of worth or value. Someone who avoids deep relationships may fear emotional vulnerability and loss. A boss who micromanages could be trying to ensure their own job security. A friend who clings to outdated beliefs may do so out of a need for stability and control. Survival scenarios. Simple scenarios. A child lies about breaking a vase to avoid punishment, threat to security. A teenager exaggerates their accomplishments to impress peers and gain acceptance. An employee stays silent in a meeting to avoid confrontation. A person avoids eye contact when feeling insecure or threatened. Someone instinctively apologizes excessively to prevent social rejection. A student pretends to understand a lesson to avoid embarrassment. A person smiles politely at a rude comment to avoid conflict. An individual holds back tears in public to maintain composure and social image. A driver feigns patience in traffic to prevent road rage incidents. A person hesitates before asking a question in fear of seeming ignorant. Complex scenarios. A person stays in a high-stress corporate job despite deteriorating health because their fear of financial insecurity outweighs their well-being concerns. An individual remains in a controlling religious community because leaving would mean losing their family and social support system. A politician manipulates public opinion, not out of malice, but because they believe their leadership is necessary for societal stability. A person with a history of childhood neglect develops attachment issues, causing them to sabotage healthy relationships due to deep-seated trust issues. A scientist hides controversial findings because exposing them could mean professional ruin and loss of funding. An abused spouse rationalizes staying with their partner because they fear the uncertainty of life alone more than the familiar suffering. A child raised in a strict authoritarian household grows up to become a controlling parent, believing it is the best way to ensure their child's success. A soldier follows questionable orders in combat due to the deep psychological need to remain loyal to their unit, fearing alienation and dishonor. An individual addicted to social media continues to seek validation online despite the harm to their mental health, as social acceptance is a survival mechanism. A person from an impoverished background hides their struggles and pretends to be successful to avoid social stigma and exclusion. Difficult scenarios. A war general justifies devastating civilian casualties, believing extreme measures are necessary for national survival. A government official engages in corruption, seeing it as the only way to secure resources for their struggling community. A survivor of sexual abuse represses their trauma and avoids therapy, fearing it would make them vulnerable or expose them to judgment. A soldier with PTSD refuses to seek help due to the stigma surrounding mental health, fearing they will be seen as weak. A refugee commits petty crimes in a foreign country to feed their children, prioritizing immediate survival over long-term consequences. A victim of childhood sexual abuse grows up with distorted perceptions of relationships, unconsciously repeating patterns of abuse or unhealthy dynamics. A political leader incites division, believing that keeping people afraid and distracted is the only way to maintain control. A person with undiagnosed mental illness turns to substance abuse because they lack the resources or understanding to seek professional help. A whistleblower remains silent about corporate misconduct out of fear for their family's safety and livelihood. A young girl in a war-torn country is forced into marriage as her family sees it as the only way to ensure her protection and survival. Expanding our minds through contemplation. By contemplating survival-driven behaviors, We break mental limitations and learn to see beyond surface actions. This practice develops empathy for those struggling with their own instincts, detachment from judgment, leading to deeper understanding, insight into our own reactions and behaviors, nightly contemplation practice. A nightly reflection routine can help us process and integrate these insights. Consider this structure. Review the day. What moments triggered strong emotional reactions? Identify survival mechanisms. Were your actions driven by fear, comfort, or belonging? Observe others' behaviors. Can you spot survival-driven responses in others? Challenge mental limitations. What assumptions or fears held you back today? Reframe negative experiences. How can you view conflicts with more understanding? Practice compassion. Acknowledge the struggles others face daily. Express gratitude. Recognize what helped you feel safe and supported today. Set an intention. Choose one mindset shift to apply tomorrow. 10 daily practices for deepening understanding. 1. Observe without judgment. 2. Self-reflection. 3. Ask why more often. 4. Engage in deep listening. 5. Reframe negative encounters. 6. Read human psychology. 7. Practice mindful detachment. 8. Mentally place yourself in another's shoes. 9. Reduce reactivity. 10. Journal your insights. We must spend time with deep looking and investigation of human behavior through a survival lens. It's profoundly crucial in understanding why we do what we do and why others do what they do. By embracing these practices, we move beyond survival toward a richer, more compassionately conscious existence. For today, tomorrow, and beyond. Thank you for spending time here at the International World Wisdom Well and learning from this carefully curated teaching audiobook. Join in our mission of cultivating global happiness, well-being, and compassionate wisdom, inside and out. Together. This is a gift from our hearts to yours. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share with those who may benefit. Please enjoy a visit to www.worldwisdomwell.com and spend some time with our collection of well-being resources. May we all be well. May we all be happy. May we all take moments throughout each day to go deep, deeper, and deeper still.